I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. Last time, Erica and I had the opportunity to enjoy a Delta One flight over to Munich. Then we drove into Austria for a scenic drive, giving us the opportunity to take in the views and ride our first coasters of the trip. This time, we head over to Vienna's amusement parks, beginning with a smaller park with some historic rides nestled in the local neighborhood, then follow it up with Austria's biggest and most famous amusement park, which offers a wide array of dark rides and many different coasters. We kicked off our Vienna amusement park day with the smaller of the two parks, Böhmischer Prater, a park which dates back to the 1880s when Franz Bauer applied to open a carousel and games next to his home, and several other showmen opened attractions along Lahlerwald, which would be popular for local brick masons and their families who lived nearby. The park had a bit of a renaissance in the 1980s after being more of a quiet area due to the damage from Allied bombings in World War II. And today the park continues that unique way of being operated by multiple showmen, as opposed to having one owner like most amusement parks in the US. Some even have their houses on the same plot, alongside their attractions like Bauer did in the beginning. A prime example of a park being operated by different showmen can be seen toward the middle with Park Hrabalik, operated by Ernst Hrabalik, which includes one of Böhmischer's many beer gardens, a former rail car that can be rented out for birthdays and private events, and a few rides including the great cheesy dark ride Geisterbahn Halloween. This is one of those dark rides with a lift that has an anti-rollback device and a gravity-based drop in the middle, so those who count the likes of Haunted House at Camden Park may be inclined to count this as a coaster credit. Perhaps the neatest attraction of Hrabalik's small park is one of the oldest operating carousels in all of Europe. With this ride dating back to 1890, it doesn't look like most of the carousels we think of, which have many horses that move up and down while the platform rotates. Rather, the 12 wooden horses are on rocking mechanisms where you sway forwards and backwards during the platform's rotation. It's a fun ride, and it's a workout, because you gotta get your legs moving. More stationary seats can be found within the various vehicles on the platform, including a really neat trolley-style car. And the classic organ it features dates back to the 1920s, made with parts coming from Belgium and the Netherlands. Though not everything was open right at the time we were visiting, there were still several rides that were, including a classic from 1929 called Die Raupe, which feels like a predecessor to the common Himalayas and Music Expresses you see at various parks and carnivals. This one had an unexpected surprise though, as the grate your feet rest on has an added purpose of allowing air to blow up at riders, so you might want to be aware just in case you ride with a hat or dress on. One thing that Böhmischer Prater also has an abundance of is places to grab a bite and a drink. And with it being lunchtime, Erica and I paid a visit to Bierstadt, a restaurant and beer garden specializing in Viennese dishes. And being in the city that the locals call Wien, I knew exactly what I had to have. And that was Wiener Schnitzel. And you could bet this place knew how to make it delicious. Paired with a Polliner Hefeweizen, the German part of me was a happy camper. At the time of our visit, there was only one coaster operating all of Böhmischer Prater, although that's likely to change as one of the operators acquired the old Flitzer coaster made by Zier called Racing that previously operated at Bakken in Denmark, a ride that I experienced 10 years earlier as part of Theme Park Review's Scandinavia tour, so I wasn't as worried about it not being built yet. We did, however, ride the one coaster operating called Shark Trip, an SBF Visa coaster that had a rather neat system for allowing riders on, as you'd get this uniquely shaped token that you insert to activate the turnstile, which lets in a single rider at a time. This arrangement allows one operator to control both rides and handle token sales all from the same booth. Böhmischer Prater is certainly a very interesting park, especially the way that you have all these homes that are located right next to these rides, and it's just such a different feel. It feels much more laid back here.
You can actually say, I have a Ferris wheel in my front yard. Yeah.
With one park visited, it was on to the larger and much more well-known Wiener Prater. Like its smaller counterpart, this Prater also has its various rides owned by different showmen, rather than the whole park being owned by a single operator. But the similarities pretty much end there, as there's many more coasters and rides here, and they include those that are larger and far more extreme. While many of the rides are permanent to the park, some rides are brought in temporarily, including the largest coaster, which is none other than the legendary Olympia Looping. As part of its recent rotation, starting at Prater, moving to Oktoberfest in Munich in the fall, and ending the year at Hastings Park in London for Winter Wonderland. One of the things I really enjoy about this park is that not only are there a large number of coasters to ride, but they also have a lot of different dark rides to take in as well. Some of which may have had overlapping or similar themes, but even then there were still differences between them which helped them stand out more. It would be one of those dark rides first, going for a lap on Silberberg Work, which is Praters' oldest dark ride, dating back to 1952, and combined multiple scenes from various fairy tales and children's stories. And some segments looked more like museum displays of toys. Still, it was a very adorable ride to begin with. There's about a dozen coasters in the park, and the first one we tried was Boomerang, which is your run-of-the-mill Vekoma boomerang, but with a couple of differences. The biggest one you notice is the tunnel that encloses a portion of the Cobra Roll, leading to or from the loop depending on which direction the train is rolling. The other becomes quite noticeable as you board the coaster, since its original train was replaced by a custom one built by Schaefer Amusement Technology. And unlike the older new Vekoma trains you find on boomerangs, this is just a lap bar. No over-the-shoulder restraints here, and their shape makes them look more like steering handles. After riding though, I am more than happy to say,
let there be lap bars for all boomerangs!
It definitely improves the experience of the ride, like the Vekomas with the vest restraints, while also feeling more free. Another Vekoma of the park is their custom MK700 called Mega Blitz, which doesn't look like much, but upon riding, you might be surprised that it is in fact a Vekoma, and not a slightly calmer Schwarzkopf, as it rides a lot like some of the larger creations from Anton, elevated G-forces and all. The park's coaster collection will see a boost in 2025 with the addition of Wiener Looping, a custom mock Big Dipper, which had its groundwork being done as we visited. While it's a bummer to come to a park far from home when the next coaster is in the construction process, sometimes you can't help but let it motivate a future visit. Another incredibly adorable dark ride is Iceberg. While many interactive dark rides use laser guns to fire at targets, this ride uses cameras for an Arctic photo safari, aiming them at the targets which activate various Arctic creatures you see along the way. And some of the gags are pretty hilarious. The ride also utilizes elements you wouldn't expect for a dark ride like this to transition between scenes. We then came to a point where it was time to experience some pain as we rode their Volare coaster, the notorious model of Zamperla, which has never really been a pleasant ride in my experience, and this one was no different. Still, it was at least another coaster credit earned. The park also features a very large drop tower with rotating seats to give you a panoramic view up at the top. Well, unfortunately, the seats are pretty restrictive, so I wasn't able to ride, and they wouldn't run it unless they hit a minimum number of riders. So while Erica waited for others to join her, I found something that I hadn't seen since I was in Japan several years ago.
Nothing like an ice cold beer from a vending machine.
What might have been one of the most unexpected experiences of the park came from their large raft ride, Wild Alpenbahn.
This thing should not spin that much, but good God, check this out.
Oh yeah, see, look at that, look at that, look at that.
So yeah, this thing is wild, which comes from ABC Rides, even though it looks like it's an Intamin.
You see it right there? That's the same lift tail that you got at Mystic River Falls at Silver Dollar City, so we thought it was Intamin, but it's ABC Ride in Switzerland. Go figure.
It certainly wasn't a slow ride either, when you'd see the water cascade from above as the raft passed through higher portions, and having more passengers makes a difference. So if you're desperate to keep it tame, go lighter, but if you want to spin, go heavy. Because of the way Prater has rides from multiple operators, there's 3 different spinning mouse coasters, all made by different designers, including Insider, an indoor coaster that was the Mauer Rides version where passengers sit back to back, Dizzy Mouse, which is your standard Reverchon model with all 4 riders in a row, and Masquerade, which is a Gerstlauer variant where the pairs of riders face each other. It didn't hit me until riding this that we had actually ridden all 3 consecutively, and I'd honestly give Masquerade the edge simply for having a more unique layout, then Dizzy Mouse for having some of the best spinning of the 3, and finally Insider, as it seems like one of those rave coasters in a box that didn't have a lot of spinning going for it. As we headed toward the far end of the park, we found the two smallest coasters which we were unable to ride, but for different reasons. Race, which is an SBF Visa F1 Vortex, seemed to be closed as its train was sort of valleyed, and Ottoberg Bahn is only meant for the kids. And even if they would let us try, I don't think either of us would be able to sit in that tiny car properly. We were at least successful in getting to ride the standard Wildermass coaster, however it was easily overshadowed by what was simply one of the coolest dark rides in the park, Skull Rock, Curse of the Pirates. On the outside it looks like your run-of-the-mill carnival style dark ride, but it actually has some higher tech effects that put it on par with some smaller theme parks which invest in solid theming. I wouldn't go expecting a Disney or Universal quality ride, but for what it is, it's a darn good time. We then had ourselves a bit of a European funfair style kick as we went for a ride on the toboggan slide, which was similar to the slide back in Oktoberfest with a conveyor belt you would stay standing on as you got partway up. Although they didn't feature that for this one, it was still neat for reminiscing, as was the ride on their Tagada, which I had seen tons of while in South America, and I knew they were here in Europe as well. What I didn't expect to see though were people who would actually attempt to stay standing on it throughout, and the ride op kept it going. So it seems to be a pretty common challenge taken by visitors of the park, and one that I failed horribly at. The park also had a model coaster I had yet to try, and that was the Rollerball by Ride Engineers Switzerland. It was pretty tame, so you won't have to worry about an Intamin or SNS 4D experience. One of the better coasters of the park was a Gerstlauer bobsled coaster called Gesenktesaal. This was one of the more compact layouts of the model I've ridden so far, but its height and rather large drops with sweeping turns gave it the feeling of being a wild mouse on steroids, which also helped it to be one of the best coasters in the park. Unfortunately, we had another coaster we missed out on, as Hochschaubahn was closed, and this one was especially a bummer because of being one of the few scenic railways with a brakeman left in operation. But on the bright side, we still had a couple more days where we could potentially come back to grab the last couple of coasters missed if they were operating. As we hadn't eaten in a while, we discovered that Prater was home to one of the roller coaster restaurants, similar to the one I had visited at Alton Towers a couple years back, where your meal goes through its own coaster ride as it's delivered to your table. Although this one had one big difference, as rather than the kitchen staff placing the cars on the track directly, there were these robots which would sort them and occasionally break into dance sessions for the patrons below to enjoy. Admittedly, the food was pretty basic as we ended up ordering from the kids menu since lunch had been quite filling, so it didn't quite seem to meet the quality that I experienced at Alton. Still, it was fun to experience again before we enjoyed the park at night. Like those crazy European carnivals, the lights of the rides really stand out with the fog created from various attractions, and some of the brightest will lead you to the biggest coaster in the park, Olympia Looping. I have fond memories of seeing this at Theresienwiese back on that random Europe trip with Philip, and I was glad that Erica and I could enjoy a night ride on it with a much shorter line. Although not having as many people on board did make it a bit of a slower ride, so it wasn't quite as forceful as I recall. Still, having the opportunity to ride Olympia Looping in Vienna felt like a full circle moment since I had first ridden it after passing through Austria to get to Munich from Zurich. And it was a great way to cap off this day to enjoy the two amusement parks of Vienna. Whether it was the smaller Böhmischer Prater with its historic rides and an awesome beer garden and restaurant, or Wiener Prater with its massive collection of rides, including some that were huge surprises. And there would be more rides to enjoy, as the next day would offer a pair of parks to visit. One that was part of a local ice cream business, and the other which fits the mold of many smaller European theme parks. Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on various social media channels at CoastWCulture for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.